He went to rehab a lot of times, and each time he was doing great, but then things would go downhill. You've heard a million versions of this story. He was well known because he was the son of Pawn Stars star Rick Harrison. People didn't know what was in his garage after his sudden and sad death, though. When the doors were finally opened, family and friends were shocked by what they saw. It showed a side of his life that not many people knew about. Because Pawn Stars was such a big hit, the Harrison family has been in the spotlight for more than 10 years. Rick Harrison, the smart businessman who knew everything there is to know about history, became well known. He was also in the spotlight with his kids, like Corey and Adam. But when no one was watching, the Harrison family went through pain that no parent should ever have to go through. In January 2024, Rick's son, Adam Harrison, died in a terrible accident. He was only 39 years old. Fans were shocked and the family was saddened by the death. But that wasn't the end of the shock. After Adam died, his garage was finally opened, and what people found inside gave a scary picture of the man he really was, including his problems, his loves, and the secrets he kept. That being said, what was really in Adam Harrison's garage, and why couldn't even his family say anything? To answer that, we need to go back and talk about Adam and why his story is so sad and great to remember. While his brother Corey became a regular on Pawn Stars, Adam Harrison liked to stay out of the spotlight. He used to work at the gold and silver swap shop, but he never liked being in front of the cameras like his family did. Most people thought of him as Harrison, who wasn't there and whose name they heard but rarely saw. But Adam wasn't there because he wasn't talented or driven. He didn't want fame at all. Adam Warun cared hard to live a quieter, more private life, while his father and brother built a TV business. He worked in construction and did other things that interested him, not at all like the bright lights of reality TV. Adam was still a Harrison. He was just as interested, just as stubborn, and just as crazy about gathering things. And in the end, it was his garage that showed how deeply he felt those things. What kind of goods did Adam gather in secret away from the cameras? We need to talk about the tragedy that shaped Adam's last years before we can talk about what was found in his garage. It was confirmed that he died of a fentanyl overdose in January 2024. This is a sad reminder of how the opioid problem is hurting families across America. Rick Harrison could not handle the loss. He had already laid to rest his father, the well-liked old man of Game Stars. He was in a lot of pain after losing his son. Rick spoke out against the fentanyl crisis in public, demanding actions be taken and people be made aware of the problem. The family was sad about the death of their son and brother, whose lives were cut short far too soon. Drug abuse had put a dark shadow over Adam's life. While he was having a hard time, his garage told a different story, one of love and pain. Because when the doors were opened, what was inside showed how complicated a man was, torn between demons and dreams. What did they find, though, that made everyone speechless? When Adam's garage was opened, there was a lot of sadness in the air. Friends, family, and people close to him gathered, not sure what to expect. What kind of mess would it be? Full of lost tools and broken dreams? If not, would it show something else? Something that showed Adam for who he really was, despite all of his problems. When the garage door creaked open, everyone was shocked by what they saw. It wasn't a mess. It wasn't nothing. The room was very well put together, like a shrine for the things Adam loved most. Collectibles that showed his lifelong interest in history and objects were neatly stacked on shelves, a trait he clearly got from his dad. The room was full of carefully picked antiques, old coins, signs, tools, and coins. It might have looked like clutter to people who didn't know Adam, but to those who did, it showed that his mind was still looking, curious, and interested in the stories that things could tell. That wasn't all, though. In among the historical objects were very private items like journals, letters, and keepsakes that told of Adam's private struggles. They talked about a man who was hurting and hopeful at the same time, trying to hold on to parts of himself even though his addiction was trying to take over his life. What hidden truths about Adam's problems did those journals reveal? What did they leave behind? As Adam's family and friends looked through the garage some more, they found things that gave them a better idea of his life. He had worked on bikes that were among the old things in coal. Collectibles, some are done, while others are only half done. Adam's love for mechanics and artistry was clear from the way the bikes looked, all greasy and shiny in the garage light. Besides having his father's eye for valuable things, he also had Harrison's ability to fix, build, and restore things. Some boxes were full of old records, band posters, and even a collection of guitars. They were placed next to the bikes. Adam seemed to have had a quiet love for music as well. These were more than just tools. They gave her a way to express herself and reminded her of a creative life, even though no one ever saw it on camera. There were also the letters, hidden away in a broken metal box. Adam's notes to friends, thoughts on his problems, and even words of regret for times he felt he had failed showed what was going on in his mind. They were honest, sad, and upsetting to read. However, they also showed a man who knew himself, wanted to change badly, and loved his family more than his problems would ever let him show. Reading those words was terrible for Rick Harrison. It made him think of what might have been with a son who had so much promise but whose life was taken away by drug abuse. However, it may not have been the artifacts, bikes, or letters that were the most shocking find. Somewhere deeper in that shed there was a clue to the double life Adam had been living. What did he find? And why did it make no one in his family speak? The things they found in Adam's garage were more disturbing as they dug deeper. There was proof of a second life hidden behind boxes of tools and collectibles that Adam had kept from the people closest to him. Among the treasures and family photos were signs that he was still having problems. In the corners were prescription bottles, drug tools, and other things that reminded him of his addiction, which killed him in the end. It was almost like he was trying to hide them from himself. The difference was very clear. On one side, there was a man who was passionate, interested, and creative. On the other, a man fighting monsters that are too strong to beat. The family was shocked by this painful scene. It wasn't just a garage. At the heart of Adam's inner struggle was that he showed the world a side that was smart, artistic, and full of hope. He tried to hide a chaotic, painful, and damaging side of himself. It was a terrible proof for Rick Harrison of what he already thought. His son had lived with 1 foot in the dark and 1 foot in the light. While Adam's garage showed what he loved, it also showed the silent fights that no amount of love, money, or fame could save him from. Everyone was shocked when they heard the news. How could a man with so much life and promise also be in so much pain? When Rick Harrison opened that garage door, it wasn't just to find his son's things, it was about facing how much he had lost. Rick's whole life was based on keeping history alive, valuing things, and telling their tales. But the story he kept himself. His own family broke his heart more than any other. On Pawn Stars, Rick has always been shown as the tough-as-nails, realistic boss. But behind the smart business sense is a father who has been through unbearable pain. The first thing is that he lost his father, Richard Oldman Harrison, in 2018. After only a few years, he had to bury his own son. The pain of losing Adam was made worse by knowing how he died. Amel did more than just take Adam away. It took away the future Rick had hoped for his son. Still, Rick found a new reason to live in his sadness, to speak out against the disease that killed his child. Rick has talked a lot about how dangerous fentanyl is in interviews and public comments since Adam's death. Getting families to talk about addiction in an open way, and holding those responsible for the problem accountable. He felt more than just sadness about Adam's death. It was an order to do something. But Rick's sadness is clear in every line of his face, no matter how strong his words are. The garage may have shown Rick Adams' dark sides, but it also made him face the harsh truth that his love alone could not protect his son from his problems. The question that won't go away is scary. Can this kind of loss ever really go away for a dad? Or will Adam's absence always hurt you? But Adam Harrison lived a life away from the cameras, and his impact will always be felt. Pawn Stars fans may have seen him as the kid who didn't want to be famous, but to people who knew him, he was more than just Rick Harrison's child. Adam's garage showed how much he loved history, music, motors, and being creative. Each collectible, tool, and unfinished project told a story of a man who liked telling stories, saw beauty in things that were lost, and wanted to make something that would last. Even more important was shown in his diaries and letters. Someone who cared a lot, felt guilty, and wanted to be forgiven. They showed the people behind the drug news stories. Adam wasn't just another number in the drug crisis. He was a son, a brother, and a friend, and his problems showed the pain that families all over the world feel every day. In many ways, Adam's legacy isn't what he did in public, but the talks that his death has caused. After he died, his family, his father, and his friends had to face the terrible truth of addiction, and how quickly it needs to be fixed. Adam left behind a lot of things, but the lessons his story teaches may be the most important thing he left behind. It wasn't just about finding things when Adam's garage was opened. The neat shelves of collectibles, the motorbikes, and the guitars were all part of the story. They showed his interests, imagination, and desire to learn. But the things that were hidden about his problems told a different story, one of pain, strife, and silence. The garage was a lot like Adam's life in a lot of ways. It showed that the man was smart, passionate, and full of promise on the outside. On the inside, it showed the fire jeets that not many could see or understand. For the Harrison family, being in that shed was like being in Adam's head, a spot where beauty and chaos lived together and dreams and monsters fought each other. It was scary, upsetting, and something I will never forget. Not the things themselves that silenced them, but the fact that they had only known bits and pieces of Adam. The garage gave them a fuller picture, one that made them feel both hopeful and sad. It made them and all of us remember that people we think we know well may be going through things we can't see. What did they really do when they broke into Rick Harrison's son's garage? They found more than just old things, bikes, and papers. They found Adam, the real Adam. He was a man of pain and fire, and his life was more complicated than most people ever thought. They couldn't say anything because the findings showed both the beauty and the tragedy of his story. It showed how much he loved history and art, but it also showed the quiet fights that took his life too soon. Adam Harrison's death at age 39 is a sad reminder that addiction can happen to anyone. It can affect even the most well-known families.